That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. She couldn't do it. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat all she did was walk away. And I was like, what is this about? What?
That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. Couldn't do it.
Up for sound bites. This is awesome.
All right. All right. Welcome back to Anti-Religious Scripture Study. And oh my goodness, everything that I fixed earlier has gone. So just hold on a second while I put Jack's picture back in here. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
It's
I'm
okay.
here though. I'm here though,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, it'll be fine. It'll just take me a sec to what do you call it? OBS was acting crazy on me. So let me just put eSword up and we'll be on back in business. There we go. All right. Okay, we're good.
All right. Um Unfortunately, you know, Karen had a spiritual dilemma today about some spiritual influence being directed at her children from another religion. And oh my goodness, we had an interesting conversation this morning. Religions are crazy, dude. But anyway, we kind of like skimmed through chapter 20 last time because we were addressing the all important statement of the Ten Commandments. Because even if you just count the shalt not and shall and obey and honor and remember, like all these commandments, there's definitely more than 10 right
Mm-hmm.
here in chapter 20.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most important thing is the last part of the chapter that nobody ever reads, which is verse 18 and beyond, where the people were the ones who decided, okay, stop, we can't take anymore. You know, these commandments that are being spoken to us, we're being shaken to our core, we're going to die, right? And they drew off and they said, you, Moshe, go up the mountain and get the rest of the commands. They didn't think that they were done. And then we'll listen to it when you come back, right? They know the commandments are not done. And then the commandments begin over again, or I should say continue, from verse 22 and on. So we're going to continue as well. Now, I had a dilemma on how to further approach the rest of Exodus, because I know there's a lot of commandments that are not going to resonate with people because culturally it's different, the times are different, the way that like debt is different, like even debt, the word debt itself is completely changed. You know, everybody knows what the word debt means today, but back in the day it wasn't like that. It was like a redemption thing. And so we're going to continue through the commandments, but I guarantee you there's going to be spiraling, like you know, whatever. I'm not even gonna postulate what the arguments are going to be because I've heard them so many times, and if I suggest them, then maybe they will still approach me with them.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the point, folks. Regardless of how you feel about these commandments, these are not things for me to argue. These are things for me to read and understand and get a perspective of how these commandments were instituted and how they apply to me. If those do not affect you, if you have no desire of reading what the scripture says and applying it to your life, then go somewhere else because this is not for you. And I'll read my disclaimer. Just Jack's disclaimer. To the religious, if you believe it's wrong to study scripture outside of your religion or denomination, if you believe your religious leaders or church fathers are incapable of having inherited anti-scriptural traditions of men, if you've already made up your mind about scripture, including the scripture shouldn't be studied at all, then this stream is not for you. To others, if you are open-minded to others' opinions, if you have not made up your mind about scripture, if you've been turned off to religion but believe there's truth in scripture that may have been changed or hidden by religion, if you live according to scripture and like to dig in and discover more, then this stream is for you. We are looking at scripture in the original language using concordances or dictionaries for root words, as well as context from a non-religion perspective. We will as well have life experience discussion. We are not here to argue with others about theology or doctrine by the traditions of men, including Catholicism, Christianity, or Judaism. We will be discussing the importance of origins and show how religions contradict the scriptures. There you go. So just, you know, a quick snippet. Well, No, we don't need to get into that because I didn't verify that we needed to get into that. But anyway, let's go to chapter 21.
Alrighty. Alright, chapter 21. These are the right rulings which you are set before them. Which
Right.
you are to set before them. Okay.
Yeah. Right rulings are judgments or justices. In other words, like a set of laws for what is just, rather than, well, he's poor, so he doesn't deserve the same right of justice as someone who can, afford things, right? Judgment and justice is right rulings. Right rulings, I think, is actually a pretty good way to put it.
All right. When you buy a Hebrew servant, he serves 6 years, and in the 7th he goes out free for naught.
Now this is this is a set of commandments that are being given to a majority Hebrews. So what is this? Buy a servant. Well, number one, it's not buy, it's acquire. And a servant is not necessarily, okay, so like let's say you went to war and somebody got taken into captivity. That servant would be different than someone who is in servitude due to a debt, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's say they purchase a land, but they, let's say they're buying back land, okay? So that's a concept in the Israelite setup, is if your father loses his inheritance due to some other deal that was made, and you go to reacquire that land and you don't have the means to reacquire the land, you can actually indenture servitude to that land so that it becomes back part of yours, if you understand what I'm saying. So like, let's say some other dude's living on your land, mm-hmm. and you want your land back. So you become a server of the land until you've worked off the debt for the land. Okay. Yeah. And that agreement is made by the one who acquires the servant and the servant himself. It's not like, oh, you're mine now. That's not the buy a servant. That's not what that means. It's a redemption process. Like, oh, you want your land back? Okay, then you work the land for me until you've accrued up enough of the redemption. Mm-hmm. Right. Like I said, this is going to be complicated stuff because it's out of context from our culture.
Right, from our time that we're living in.
Right. So the most a servant can be indentured for is 7 years.
Okay.
That's what this is about. That's the most you can be indentured for.
If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. Okay, so
pretty self-explanatory. If he decides that he can't finish out the servitude and he wants to go elsewhere, he's free to do that.
If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children are her master's, and he goes out by himself.
All right, so this is going to be very complicated for today's culture and trying to understand this. So let's say he comes back, for this property, and he says, well, let's say it's even his daughter, okay? So here is my daughter. Since you're going to be inheriting the land, take my daughter as your wife, and you have children. And then the guy is like, you know what? I don't want to keep doing this. I'm giving up the land, and he can ditch his wife and children. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because the owner of the land will still take care of them. All right?
And if the servant truly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, let me not go out free. Then his master shall bring him before Elohim, and shall bring him to the door, or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever.
In other words, I like this setup. We're going to keep it the way it is. So he actually gets an ear piercing as a marker of forever indentions, forever servitude to the man. And so, yeah, piercings was a symbol of ownership. Like, I think they still do it today, where they put a ring in a bull's nose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is like, you know, it's saying that the bull is owned and you can lead the bull around by the ring. And so this, you know, it's kind of that symbology.
Right. And when a man sells his daughter to be a female servant, she does not go out as the male servants do.
If she becomes a, you know, wife, she doesn't go off not being a wife. It's very complicated. I'm telling you, like, culturally, this is way different from us.
Yeah. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, who has engaged her to himself, then he shall let her be ransomed. He shall have no authority to sell her to a foreign people because of him deceiving her.
Yep, complicated.
Who has engaged herself to him.
Yeah, so somebody takes on, so she's a female servant. She's working in servitude. And he decides he doesn't want to be married to her. Well, then he has to ransom her. That means he has to pay the price for her to live off of. In other words, he has to financially support her for the rest of her life. He can't just like send her off with nothing.
Right. And if he has engaged her to his son, he is to her as is the right of daughters.
So that's what's the word? Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Dowry. Okay, so he's responsible for the dowry.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's basically keeping it in the family or whatever, he still has to require of the son the dowry.
If he takes another wife, her food, her covering, and her marriage rights are not to be diminished.
Right, so you can't take on a new wife and dump your old wife. If you do choose to be responsible for another woman, you have to take care of both of them. You can't just dismiss one wife and send her off with nothingness.
Right.
And we haven't got there, but further in chapters it talks about what if she decides that she doesn't want to be married, or what if he decides if he doesn't want to be married, then they remain single, right? They can't remarry.
Okay.
But you can choose to be single. Yeah.
And if he does not do these three for her, then she shall go out for naught without silver. He who strikes a man that he dies shall certainly be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait, but Elohim delivered him into his hand, then I shall appoint for you a place where he is to flee.
Very interesting concept here. So you get in a fight with a dude, and he dies.
Mm-hmm.
Then you should die too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not premeditated, okay, that would be today's terminology. If it's not premeditated murder, then you actually have a place where you can go. It's called the oh my gosh, I'm brain farting all over the place today. Oh, I can't think of it. Anyways, it's a land of fleers, right? Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like there's actually a city. Oh my gosh, it almost came to me and then it left. Anyway, they flee to this city, and they can no longer go back home because they could die. You know, somebody's going to have vengeance on their hands, you know. So he gets to flee to this land. Watch, it's going to pop in at the wrong time.
But when
what they call that city.
Oh. But when a man acts presumptuously against his neighbor to kill him by treachery, you are to take him even from my slaughter place to die.
Yeah, I don't like presumptuously. Like he's boiling over against his neighbor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you know, this guy needs to be put to death, and not only does he need to be put to death, but he needs to be put to death like far away from the camp. He, like, somebody who, like, premeditatedly murders someone, he doesn't even deserve to die around us. Just take him out, kill him.
And he who strikes his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death.
And we're talking about old folks here, by the way. The thing is like, the taking him out to where he doesn't even die, like, when you have a situation like this, like somebody dies, there's actually a court process, kind of like ours today, and they fervently search for witnesses, evidence, all these other things. When you're found, like, 100%, like, you knew ahead of time that you were going to kill this person, then you no longer belong to Israel. So this act presumptuously later on shows up in other places in the scripture with different Hebrew words, but they write the same word in English, act presumptuously. And what it means is, in the, where you have your fist up, like, I don't care what you say, I'm going to do what I want, so you're premeditatively knowing right from wrong, but you're choosing wrong, right? This is not out of ignorance.
Right. Okay.
To act presumptuously, sorry.
And he who kidnaps a man and sells him.
Verse 16?
Yeah. And he who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, shall certainly be put to death.
So this would be what today's slavery would be considered. So you, without the man's permission, take him into captivity and put him to work or ransom him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as murder in the eyes of the Creator, because you're stealing the man's life.
Right.
Is it frozen?
No. It's what frozen?
It was on my end. Sorry.
Oh, okay. And
it keeps recalling you, like I can hear it ringing on Skype, and then you pick up when you talk. It's weird.
Oh. And he who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. And when men strive together, and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die, but is confined to his bed, if he rises again and walks about outside with his staff, then he who struck him shall be innocent. He only pays for lost time and sees to it that he is completely healed.
Now that's an interesting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they get in a fight, and, like, the dude's like, okay, I need the upper hand. So he grabs a stone, or he starts hitting him harder or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he becomes unable to work. Then he's responsible for lost wages, which sounds, familiar to today's laws, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
it goes into the court system.
Mm-hmm.
He's held innocent, but if the dude dies, then he's held guilty of murder.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like how it goes today.
Yep.
And when a man strikes his male or female servant with a rod so that he dies under his hand, he shall certainly be punished.
Yep. It doesn't matter if he was your servant. You're still going to have to be put to death.
But if he remains alive a day or two, he is not punished, for he is his property.
That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there's no recompense. It's just he's not the proper word here is not punished, it's avenged. So in other words, he's not put to death for the man who died.
Okay.
If you look over there, it's the word avenge, not punished.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of a weak thing to say. Oh, he won't be punished at all. No, he'll be punished. He just won't be put to death. His life will not be avenged because he didn't die.
And when men strive, and they shall smite a pregnant woman, and her children come out, yet there is no injury, he shall certainly be punished accordingly, as the woman's husband lays upon him, and he shall give through the judges.
Isn't that cool? If some dude beats up or hits my pregnant wife, then I should be able to choose the punishment for him. That sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah. But if there is injury, then you shall give life for life. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash.
And some people have a problem with this, right? If everybody does eye for an eye, then everybody will walk around blind. Is what's spoken of. But if you read not just this context, but the entirety of the Torah, what it's talking about is the punishment cannot be greater than the crime. In other words, if you take somebody's eye, he can't take an eye and an ear or whatever, right? He can only take, that's the fullest extent of the punishment.
Right.
Right?
And when a man strikes the eye of his male or female servant and destroys it, he is to let him go free for the sake of his eye.
So his debt is paid if the servant is injured. Now imagine if that was the case in the alleged story of slavery of the beginning of America. You know,
right.
There would be a lot of land handed out. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And if he knocks out the tooth of his male or female servant, he is to let him go free for the sake of his tooth.
Imagine that. For the sake of his tooth. I mean, look, that can happen, right? Get in a fight, tooth gets knocked out. Okay, his debt's paid. You knocked out his tooth.
Yeah. And when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, then the ox shall certainly be stoned, and its flesh is not eaten, and the owner of the ox is innocent.
So you feed the ox weed, right? So it can be stoned?
Right.
All right, so an ox gores a man, right? The owner of the ox is innocent.
But the ox has to die.
Yep.
However, if the ox was previously in the habit of goring and its owner has been warned, and he has not kept it confined so that it has killed a man or a woman, the ox is stoned and its owner is also put to death.
Now, does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
See, I mean, a lot of this is logically like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, so the ox is killed before, and you didn't pen him up? You didn't, like, separate him so that he doesn't kill again, and then he kills somebody? Yeah, you're dead, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're killing somebody. You're using... Your ox is being used as an implement of death, so...
Gross negligence.
Gross negligence, there you go. But, I mean, think about this. Like, if a dog is... if a dog injures somebody, like, right, they typically, like, have it, you know, isolated or whatever. But then if it does it again, then the dog is put to death, and the owner is not held responsible. At the most, the owner gets fined, right? In today's, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that if you think about that in correlation with today, a lot of these laws are very similar to how we have it. But if your pet kills another human being, that you should be held accountable for that, especially if it's been known to attack before.
Right. Okay. If a sin covering is laid upon him, then he shall give the ransom of his life, whatever is laid on him.
Okay, so you see the sin covering, it's italicized.
Yeah.
Right? Sin. Because it literally just says covering or an atonement. Okay, so an atonement is a covering over a debt or whatever. In King James Version, it just says, if there be laid upon him a sum of money. That's it. Sum of money. No, it's a covering. It's an atonement. So sin covering is better than sum of money, but it's a atonement.
Okay.
An atonement means a buyback.
Whether it has gored a son or gored a daughter, according to this right ruling, it is done to him. If the ox gores a male or female servant, he is to give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox is stoned. And when a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, The owner of the pit is to repay. He is to give silver to their owner, and the dead beast is his.
Okay, so what do you think this pit is? If a man opens a pit, what do you think a pit is? It's a well.
Oh, well, yeah. Could be.
Yeah. No, it literally is the word for well. I don't know
is
why
it?
they chose pit there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, well/pit. Okay.
Yep.
And when the ox of a man smites the ox of his neighbor, and it dies, then they shall sell the live ox, and divide the silver from it, and also divide the dead ox.
So in other words, not only repay, but then some. Right? Like you had no right killing my ox.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're going to have to give up one of your oxes, basically. And then it's divided from there.
Okay. So the ox that lives gets sold, and the dead one gets divided, and everything gets split?
Yep. Like I lost an ox because of you. Now you're going to lose an ox, and we'll split the difference.
Right. Or if it
Very
was
fair.
Yeah. Or if it was known that the ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner has not kept it confined, he shall certainly repay ox for ox, while the dead beast is his.
That's like if an ox kills an ox.
Yeah.
All right. We made it through it. I reckon I'll open the chat. I did not get a link from you, but that's okay. I think, is it on Karen B?
Yeah, it's on both right now.
Okay. Doobie bop. Oh, that's the wrong Karen B. Yo.
Here. I'm going to give you a link.
All right, live. I'm there. Shutting that down. Going to live chat. I hope I'm not buffering out.
You're okay.
Okay. Yeah, because it was weird earlier. Skype kept calling you back. All right. It's amazing how a lot of our laws come from the Torah. Yeah, they actually admit that. Like, if you look at the history of the common laws, they tell you it's based on Torah, which is interesting because they teach in churchianity that that's all been done away with, right? Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Right. Any questions, comments in chat? Are y'all sure those texts are original or not contrived?
Do what?
Somebody asked if we're sure that the texts are original and not contrived.
I don't know what that means.
I think, are you asking about the Bible, if the scriptures that we're reading, if they're original and not contrived? It's still a translation from Hebrew to English.
Yeah, always. Yeah. I mean, the original, okay, so this is the common thing. Like, how do we know it's like from the creator and not from man? The same old, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a matter of faith to believe any portion of it is inspired from the creator, right? Like any portion of it. My perspective is that the Torah is the oldest, most complete, preserved manuscript throughout cultures and time. Like, it's not just the Jews who have copies of Torah. I mean, it's all over the place. And the other thing is, like, when it gets to, like, let's say the history books. Okay, let's say Kings and Chronicles, for instance, for an example. These are historical books. These are not Torah. And there are differences between the manuscripts of Kings and the manuscripts of Chronicles. And it's like having two different history books, and some have an additional perspective and some have less of a perspective, or some people put their own spin on it, how they see it historically. Those books are historical, but the Torah is the only one that is ascribed to a transmitting of the Creator to a man to be recorded. In other words, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy is allegedly, okay, and by my faith it is, the Creator speaking to Moshe and saying, write these words down, right? So contextually, like letter for letter, jot for jot, tittle for tittle, was prescribed by the Creator for Moshe to copy. That would be the difference from the rest of the Bible, according to me. So, and that's obviously a perspective. Hey, Fast Eddie Flyhead. Fast Eddie's not new. Why is he saying I'm new here?
Oh.
He may be new to this show, but he's not new.
Yeah.
But if you are new, anybody who's watching this, if you are new, please watch the first couple episodes of the series, because it gives you a perspective of how I go through this, and I break down each one of these words in the ancient Hebrew context. That's why some of these words are different than the English translation, where I pull it out. I'm like, whoa, that's not how I would translate it. You know, it's not quite containing the perspective of it. It's just like, you know, they're avenging rather than punishment is, you know, there's a different nuance than just a punishment.
Someone says Sanctuary City. Is that the city? Where you go?
No. But that's a good guess. City of Refuge. Woo! It
City
finally
of
came up.
Refuge. Okay.
Yeah. It's literally translated in later verses as the City of Refuge. There we go.
All right.
All right. But that was a good guess, and then it kept coming back to me, and then I would lose it right before I said it. I hate when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Any more?
Looking.
All right, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom to Fast Eddie Flathead, Steph 40, Dennis, Aisling 717. What's up, Cammy? Mr. Oak. And Malone. Rob. Cleveland. Clearly. What's up, Clearly? Christopher. And yeah, other people on the other channels as well. Shabbat Shalom.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Anti-Religious Scripture Study with Karen B and Just Jack.
Earth's still flat, y'all.
Always.
1 month till Flattoberfest. Woohoo!
That's right. 1 month till Flattoberfest, you guys. It's going to be awesome. Get your tickets. See you there.
All right. Take care, all.
All right.
Shalom.